Baldwin County Public School System, considered one of the finest educational environments in the entire state of Alabama, has a history beginning in the latter part of the 18th century, when, as records indicate, Alabama's first public schoolhouse was built in the North Baldwin County community of Tensas in 1799. And at that time, nearly 10 years prior to Baldwin being organized as a county, the area remained geographically expanse. Agriculture served as king, and family farms dotted every section of the county. And in this era of extremely limited highway systems, individual communities built their own respective public schoolhouses, with the Board of Education supplying teachers to provide instruction. In the early part of the 20th century, the Baldwin County Public School System boasted over 80 separate school districts, each with their own individual public schoolhouse. And as time progressed, marked with improvements in transportation and engineering, numerous school districts were consolidated into nearby areas, leaving us today with very few of the original and historic public schoolhouses which distinguished Baldwin County, beginning in 1799, as the birthplace of Alabama's first public schoolhouse. This documentary, commissioned by the Honorable County Commissioners of Baldwin County and honorable members of the Baldwin County Board of Education, seeks to illuminate these few remaining and historic original public schoolhouses in an effort to pay tribute to one of the finest public school systems in Alabama. Located in North Baldwin County at the county seat in Bay Minette, the old Bay Minette Elementary School remains a landmark distinguishing the provision of public education in this historic community. And while public education in Bay Minette has prospered for over 100 years, the old Bay Minette Elementary School accentuates the community's public architectural landscape by imbuing a classic facade and conservative school design among the many modern edifices found throughout the county seat. Upon the school's original establishment on Blackburn Avenue in the first part of the 20th century, the facility consisted of numerous classrooms which accommodated many students and contained a cafeteria and an auditorium which was used by 1st through 6th grade students. And it wasn't until the 1980s that through the construction of new additions to the facility which increased the number of classrooms, kindergarten became another accompaniment to the provision of educational enlightenment provided the youth at the school. As an important and architecturally historic reminder of Bay Minette's past, today the old Bay Minette Elementary School reminds its guests, from the students of all ages who graced its halls through its distinguished and continued period of service as an active educational institution, to the many visitors who come through the school year after year, of a simpler time when the joy of a quiet breeze catching a student striding through its wooden-laden halls remained as refreshing as a gust of air conditioning in our modern time.
Minette Elementary was nearing completion when I came to Baldwin County High School as a student in 1933. It was fully finished during my years at the high school. It is of like construction to the old Baldwin County High School. It had the same asbestos shingle roof, which was very hard to maintain. Every time we repaired one leak, we created two more while we were crawling around up there. A very resourceful carpenter by the name of Snowden devised a system for controlling the leaks in the schools that we used for many years afterwards, and I'm sure that the remains of some of his contraptions are still in those attics today. He simply gathered empty 5-gallon paint buckets, climbed up into the attics of these buildings when it was raining, and put 5-gallon buckets under the major leaks. And the leaks were always small with that type of roof, but a 5-gallon can would generally contain more water than would pour in any one session. And it got so hot in those attics that that water soon evaporated. And that became our means of controlling leaks throughout the system. And it wasn't a bad system. It worked. I remember learning about that in the attic of the Minette Elementary School. I saw those hundreds. There are hundreds. I'm sure they're there right now. Hundreds of 5-gallon buckets. Now the roofs have been changed, and we no longer have these multiple leaks to control, but I'm sure those 5-gallon buckets are still up there. A tornado hit Minette Elementary School squarely on. It was not the same tornado that hit the middle school. It took off a good portion of the roof. Well, we laid out sheets of visqueen on the floor. Collect water, and we tried to have school, and then one of the classrooms, we tried to have school in up into half the room, and the teacher was trying to teach there, and a parent came in, and she looked at this dam we had built. The kids sitting on the desk and the teacher teaching. She walked across and she grabbed her kid by one hand and lifted it almost off the ground, and she went out. Be kidding. You have got to be kidding. And I looked myself in the eye that morning, and I told myself, yes, indeed, you got to be kidding. You have got to be kidding, she said.
The Minette Elementary building that was built in 1929 was a story building that was where the city park is today. In 1929, that school was built on the same campus as the high school and served grades 1 through 6. Campus. The elementary school, when it was built, housed 16 wonderful classrooms, an auditorium, and a cafeteria. Until the late until 1991, when the intermediate school, grades 4 and 5, were moved separate entity and was moved to the site of the Douglasville High School. And today, the Minette Elementary School does serve grades K.
Grew up in this neighborhood, so it was a neighborhood school. And being a neighborhood, you could walk to school, and like you say, there wasn't many vehicles back in those days and everything, so we and like, you know, it's just one of those things with your elementary. I can look back and remember all my elementary teachers because we had so many good experiences. They put us in the same classroom, and we were about as close like two brothers, but it didn't agree too well at school. But I had a teacher, Miss James, back in those days that could handle us. Until we left the 6th grade, we would not be in the same class again. So, but back in those days, you know, principals, you know, could communicate with the parents, and you know, they'd see them at the grocery store, see them at church. You always, you know, as a kid, worried about what he would say to your parents, but he always had positive things to say, and he was always a good special person. Across campus, and you'd go I had 1 through 4 in this building that we're sitting in. 5th grade, you would move just on the other side of where our cafeteria is located now. And one thing I was talking about earlier in the 5th grade, how Bay Minette's changed though. I was a safety patrol boy, and my responsibility was stop her and put on my badge, and I would stop traffic and let the students cross Hand Avenue. You know how things have changed now, but back right here, we would stop traffic and let the children across, and we were crossing guards. And that's one thing that stood out in my mind, besides good teachers, close teachers. They cared. Elementary. Then you moved over to the middle school, which was just a little further down from toward 5th Street, and you went through middle school there. He was a former principal, assistant principal in the school system. Well, he was assistant superintendent before he was my 7th grade. He could really motivate you and help you a lot in those early days, because you know middle schools even back then was an adjustment. Those type things, and had to have adults to keep you in line a lot of times. Then as we moved on up to the high school, it was just great years. You had Mr. Williams. All of us, and he had seen us back. We were just first, second, third graders, so it was special having him. He was just a good man. He knew the community well. In high school, that back in those days, when it became lunchtime, you could just leave and get lunch. Vehicles back, even when I was in high school, that was in the late 60s, early 70s, but we would walk up to the Dairy Dream, which is right next to Norris Funeral Home, which was up down, near the Civic Center there, and most people have been around, it was just that or the bowling alley, so you had 3 places you could go for lunch. About that too, I remember I had Miss Underwood, Eleanor Underwood, for English senior year. Of course, I played athletics, and I had her husband for football, so she didn't want to have to go visit the field house, because it wasn't too pleasant when you went out there. He had a way of, Lyle Underwood had a way of getting this message across to you. You weren't tardy the next time, but I could go. There's numerous experiences I could talk about, but it was special to me. After all that, I've been in the school system. It's been great getting back in the community. Really, the neighborhood I grew up in, I could walk home if I needed to. I still live a block away, and being able. It's just been a good experience for me in this time of my career, being back in your hometown. It's just a special place to be. I love Bay Minette. I love Baldwin County. I've won most of my life since I was a kid, but I'm very partial to this one. I think we have a fine school system, great leadership, good people, good parents. Attending here. Of course, it's been a long, long time ago now, but we went to a private preschool back in those days, and it was just Humpty Dumpty. A lot of us, my first grade teacher. I remember the thing I remember about her is The problem we had back in those days, especially with the boys, and I'm sure we don't have near the problem at in the first grade, and you know, you lay there, and then my cousin was in there with me, and I mean, like I said, we were close, but like he'd pull on my foot, and you know, that would irritate. Coat rooms, you know, they would say, meet me back in the coat room. You know, you go back in the little back room, they pull the curtain, you know, and then you'd hear, you know, hollers and screams coming out. My cousin did several times, and he didn't forget it when we got home either. He always blamed me. He said I was a politician, and he would always just be the one getting caught doing the bad thing. You know, I was just looking down the hallway. I could just about see my room over there. And then my second grade room, as I come along, that's when they put the mistletoe over there, and you kiss the girls. You know, you get back over here. The room that you can see looking straight ahead was my fourth grade room, Miss Tisha. I had Miss Tisha in the fourth grade, and it was a party in there. You know, she used to let us play music. We thought we were in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, you know, that we were playing music, dancing, and things like that. And parents didn't like it too much. We'd come home saying we were dancing in the classroom. Her name, because she did give me my first N. The only N I had in elementary school means, you know, not a U, but an N. And but ended up going to some family reunions where some people we used to, but I remember I thought she was the strictest person I've ever been around. Probably learned the most from her. You don't appreciate people like that at the time sometimes. Right here, I let my same cousin talk me into it. He could talk me into a lot he was a good singer. He had a lot of talent. He was a great singer, and I was in 4-H, and they had a little singing you know, where you had to he taught me into doing a Blue Velvet was a song. We did a little duet together, and we were going to lip sing it. I remember the reason I admire kids that get up on the stage now, because I mean, on the athletic field I was okay, but on a stage like that I was scared to death, and I know the people could see laughing at me, you know, and carrying on, but it's just one of those experiences. Kind of helps you later on, because I know how hard it was for me to do something like that. And then I ended up my elementary years with probably the sweetest lady I've ever had in the 6th grade, so it got me ready. I went from one of the toughest to she was strict, but then it was just like moving next door. I mean, you didn't move far from 6th grade to 7th grade, and that's when we had you were disciplined. I mean, I'm not talking about easy discipline either. And I was best friends with her son, you know, but that didn't slow her down. She went ahead and disciplined us back in those days. With her, I didn't think one night of missing my homework would cause that, but I found out different. And then as we, you know, go up, I remember, you know, like, you know, Dr. Cabinets. All of us were in high school about the same time. A lot of us that still haven't retired in things in the school system. A lot of us from the Minette area were all in high school, a greater the activities. You know, we had it was just different back in then. You had a lot more freedom. You know, you just had to. Different activities that went on that, but you know, everything was so much smaller back then. You know, Minette wasn't near as large. remember some friends of mine saying, I'm not going to say I was involved with this one, but I can remember, you know, even back then they had the day, you know, most people thought it was delegated for seniors to miss water skiing, you know, and I heard about these 3 guys that, I'm not going to call their names at this time, but I'm not going to say I was included, but I'm not going to say I wasn't included. Looked up and guess who was staring in our face? Mr. McDaniel. It was on a Friday, and what happened, Mac just jumped in his car and took off. So, I mean, we're all to do so. You know, of course, Saturday and Sunday, that's the longest 2 days. I mean, first time in my life I'd ever wanted a weekend to end. You know, I wanted to get back and let him go ahead and do what he was going to do if he was going to do something, you know. Today, I guess, wonder what's going to happen. But that's the way Mac was. He got his point across. We never did go to live oak when we weren't supposed to again, I think, during school. A day we thought was, you know, you learn from those kind of things. Sports was a big part of what we did back in those days. Just like everything else, you know, you needed things. Back a little bit before my time, and then I can remember just before my time they would play at the Armory. Down there, and some of my cousins that were a little bit older used to play at the auditorium when they played basketball. But I can remember when I was in the 7th grade, I had a Coach Cunningham, and 10 teams of 5, and we would practice out in this open area outside. They wouldn't let us practice in the gym in the 7th grade and 8th grade because they had to. In the cold months, so we used to wear, you know, our long johns and the hoods that pulled over, and one thing I remember, you learn not to miss a layup because it's real cold out. To miss the layups, and when you're freezing cold out there, you got where you just didn't miss layups. And of course, playing in the gym for the games was, but he used to sit us up in the bleachers. But one thing I remember going down to places like Loxley and Summerdale was always fun because the courts were a lot like this auditorium right here, and they were real. In that auditorium, but it had a stage like we have here, and had they would line the people up real tight on the court. I mean, if you fought, I mean, and it would be packed even back in those. You'd fall up on the stage, and on one end at Loxley in particular, you had to put your foot on the wall because the line was so close you couldn't get all the way out of bounds, so you had to put your foot on the wall to. In half court, it was really 3/4 back this way, but we didn't think anything about it. We knew, but if you took a kid out there now, they would be so confused they wouldn't know how to play. But we were used to playing everything. One thing I remember out of all of it, we went to play at Perdita one time when I was in the 7th grade, and I can't even remember what teams win the tournament, but I remember they had the best peach cobbler. And I remember playing at the Nicholas Center, you know, when you were a kid, you know. It was like the Armory, you know. You go up for a layup and come down, the floors would be slick, and you might. Just thought that's what you played in. We didn't know any better. Facilities didn't mean that much to us. As long as we had a ball and a goal and or a field, a cup. Coke cups and use your hand. You had a baseball game going, give you a tennis ball, and you could play for hours, you know. Now, you know, they got all the video games and all that. We didn't have all. That's back before the gym was here. You know, we used to just come play baseball over here, and this campus has always been just important. Poles out of the front ditch here, you know. As a kid, ditch has been here. We used to go down there. If you got a good rain, you'd go swimming out front, you know. Swim before the water left. Still gets like that, but you know, we wouldn't. What we know now, we wouldn't want people swimming. Back then, we didn't know as much.
My school in Stapleton, Alabama, 1926 and 1927. Family moved to a wooden building that had a belfry on it. It's located in the center of a residential district. I started fourth grade. At that time, Mr. Harris was principal and his wife was the only place that they had to use for that course. Moving to the elementary school, which presently now is being used, I finished the 6th grade in this building at the elementary school. And by the way, I have a certificate. I have a certificate that shows that I finished the 6th grade. Going to the 7th grade, things got pretty rough. We had to go through a rat line. I was a very small individual. I had a lot of nicknames. They called me Shorty, Lefty, I'm left-handed. They called me Blue Jean. I always wore dungarees and overalls. I went through the back paddle line at the high school, and they were pretty severe. They were older students, and I don't know why it was permitted, but older students took advantage of younger students. After school, the older students would waylay us on the way home and also pick on us or fight us. I learned how to defend myself, and I was able, even though I was smaller, to defend myself. I played baseball in high school. I was a left-handed pitcher. We were very successful. The coach wanted me to play football. I was not able to play football because I had problems with my eyes. But he really urged me to because I was pretty good on the defense. We had very capable teachers in the high school. Mr. R.L. Harris was principal of the high school, and he was very popular. One subject that I did not take was chemistry. We had a very popular chemistry teacher, which name slips my mind right now. But I found that when I went to college that chemistry was one of the most valuable courses that you could have. I took French in high school. It was very useful. I went in the Normandy invasion in France, and I was able to use my French in communicating. And I felt that I had a very valuable experience in learning the French and exercising my knowledge in it. Mrs. Harry West, was a French teacher. I wasn't very good at it, but I was able to pass the course and remember a good bit about it. I finished high school in 1937. As I said, Mr. Harris was the principal. Collins Cameron was a very popular teacher at the high school in Bay Minette. During our assembly, we would sing, and we always enjoyed the singing. He had a great voice, and we learned a lot of the popular songs, folk songs and songs that young people liked to sing at that time. It was a great experience. I feel like that the buildings that was used and still remain, I would hate to see them destroyed, because they could still be very beneficial for the education. It was a great pleasure to have those experiences.
You know, my recollection is that Bay Minette was a wonderful community to live and grow up in. One of the highlights of my remembrance is my time at the Bay Minette Elementary School. Didn't have middle school back then, transitioned right into Baldwin County High School, all here right on the same campus. I remember very fondly my teachers, Ms. McVeigh and Ms. Holland, Ms. Howard, Ms. Stamps, just wonderful ladies, and occasionally have an opportunity to run into those that are still living, and certainly have fond memories for those who are not. But had a rich educational experience here. Have a privilege today of working with many of my classmates. They're now professional colleagues, and you know, it's very interesting to have that perspective when you're a superintendent or an administrator, to have grown up in a community and know what it was. And I don't mind telling you, I started my school career here back in 1958. That's how long it's been. But to see where it has come from during that time, it just gives you a very, I think, valued perspective, and it gives you an appreciation, not only for carrying forth into the future, but for maintaining some of the historical perspective and the significance of where we've been. And it's just a wonderful experience. I believe this school certainly prepared me and prepared others well for the world in which they work today. The high school was a wonderful experience. I not only was a student there, but I came back there my second year as a teacher in 1977. And I remember jokingly, I used to tell Mr. Williams, who was the principal at that time, I said, you know, I spent so many times in this office as a student that every time I come up here to check my mailbox, I still get butterflies. And he thought that was just real comical. But Bay Minette, as a community, Bay Minette Elementary, Baldwin County High School, I can tell you that they've all been very good to me. And I have just tremendously fond memories of my experiences here. And I'm absolutely confident that those students that are involved in these schools today will leave here, and in years to come will have the same kind of fond memories. I remember one experience. I won't give names here for obvious reasons, but I can remember in a geometry class I had in the old high school building, a group of our friends had gotten together, and we decided we were going to have a little fun one day with our teacher. And we all planned this out in the hallway, and one of our classmates, who will remain nameless, said, look guys, said, when I get in the classroom, I'm going to sit on the front row. And he said, I'm going to fake a fainting spell. I'm going to just fall flat out in the floor. And he said, when I do that, he said, y'all get me up and y'all come help me out in the hallway. We'll have a little fun with this. We all agreed to do it. And about that time, we were all sitting together. This guy, he went in and he did. He sat right on the front row. And a few minutes into the geometry class, he just, you know, faked a fainting spell right in the floor. Well, we all looked at each other, decided we were going to have more fun. We decided we were just going to let him lay there and not go pick him up and take him out. We watched him, and all of a sudden he started turning red from his neck all the way up to the top of his head, just laying there, and nobody came to get him. First thing we knew, he sort of sheepishly got up off the floor, sort of eased back in his desk, and I want to tell you, we behaved the rest of the day. He did anyway. The enjoyable thing about that is when this youngster, this guy fell out on the floor, geometry teacher must have expected it because he never missed a beat. He just kept teaching the class and we just kept listening. But this guy, you know, he laid on the floor, got back up, got in his chair, and I can tell you there were no more pranks in that classroom after that. I can remember as a youngster here at the elementary school, there was a room right across from the principal's office where that was situated that housed a big dental chair, and I'm sure there were some services being provided to youngsters in the school at that day. But you know, the tale, I guess, between students was that was some form of punishment or discipline in that room. Certainly always kept us on our toes. One of the memories, and I guess I would have to offer this as a confession that I have about my time at the high school. I remember we were housed in the old building up there, and I remember I was in the 9th grade civics class. Came into class a little unruly one day, and Miss Busby, who happened to be my civics teacher, and by the way, also taught my dad during his high school career, put me out in the hallway. And I was standing out there, and about the time I was standing out there, Mr. C.V. Daniels was the principal at Baldwin County High School then. He was coming down the hallway, and I had to think real quick. So what I did, I ended up just walking over to the locker. It was right next door to the classroom, started turning the dial like I was trying to get in my locker, and that worked for me. But I tell you what happened to me years later. If you don't believe the truth, always catches up with you. A friend of mine named Ron Reben, who was the assistant principal at Baldwin County High School, told Mr. Daniels one day what I had done as a student some years later. And I said, well, Ron, I wish I hadn't have done that, but if you did, I sure hope Mr. Daniels took it well. And he said that he did. But I can tell you lots of just wonderful experiences here. Again, meeting wonderful people, friends that I continue to contact with today. And again, I just hope that the youngsters of today have the same positive experiences that I had as a youngster growing up here and going to school here.